Hello and welcome you guys. I hope everyone's doing really well. I've been gone for about half a month. I didn't expect to be gone for that long because I didn't want to take a break longer than 10 days. But I've been having lots of pain in my jaw and my tooth, especially around here. So thankfully I'm finally gonna be getting some work done on that. So hopefully I'll be back more frequently. And on top of that, I'm getting my second vaccine, so that's today, so I might be on break a little longer depending on how that reacts. But it's nice seeing you guys again, and I really hope to be putting out more consistent content. So a couple of my friends had some really beautiful ideas that I just really wanted to draw attention to. My friend Rachel was basically talking the other day about... Oh, that's the neighbors. My friend Rachel was talking the other day about how to make hanging baskets larger and fuller and how to get them to bloom all throughout the season, so I'll try to make a video on that. And then my buddy Utsav was talking about just what to look for when you're buying fertilizers. So that's a wonderful point. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So let's just get into it. I hope you guys are all doing really well, and it's good to see y'all. Okay, so here I have three different classifications of fertilizers. So these are all relatively common. Vigoro is a very common brand. Miracle Grow, I think, is probably universally the most common brand. And Schultz is particularly common here in Canada, but I'm pretty sure you could also find this in places like Europe. I think it's becoming more of a global brand. And the reason why I have these three in front of me is because they're three different types. So with the Schultz one, please pardon my nails, I've just been out in the garden. With the Schultz one, this here is a concentrate. So concentrates are liquid feed fertilizers. They're typically they're very quick release, so what that means is the effects of the fertilizer on the plant are almost instantaneous. You basically put your fertilizer into your water mix, you irrigate with it, and then you should see improvements in your plants right away. The next one is a water-soluble crystalline fertilizer. This looks like an episode of like Breaking Bad or something, made with the blue crystals. But this one here is a medium-release fertilizer. It typically saturates the deepest into the soil. It usually takes a couple of days before you see adverse positive effects on plants, and it usually feeds for 1 to 3 weeks depending on the brand. This one here says 7 to 14 days. That's a good choice for perennials, very good choice for some more needy vegetables, heavy feeders such as zucchini. This is probably your best bet. This one here is more for like things that are in smaller containers. Liquid feed fertilizers are great for houseplants. Not to say that they can't be used for larger scale plants and trees, but that's usually the ones that benefit the most. And then here you have a granular fertilizer. So this over here is very similar in composition to bone meal. And it just has these grains. A little bit of it is filler material and a little bit of it is usually potash or some sort of a macronutrient, and it usually has a pretty broad spectrum of nutrients. This here is more of a slow release fertilizer. I recommend it for something that you want to fertilize early on in the season and don't want to go back to. This is more suitable for coniferous trees, so if you grow silviculture, this here is probably the best bet for you. And it's really good for if you're growing a bulbous plant or something with lots of rhizomes. So the next thing this one here also actually tends to overwinter, and you can get a little bit more of the benefits next year, whereas these two will deteriorate greatly in the cold. So another thing I want to say is on every single package, this is as per standard in Canada, you're going to get a guarantee for net weight. So this over here includes filler, so you're not going to get that entire weight in nutrients, but it just basically tells you how much bang you get for your buck. So this one here, as we can see, is 680 grams. The Crystalline is the most heavy one, I've noticed. The granular ones are typically a little lighter because they're more porous, and then you have the liquid plant food, which is usually the lightest. So expect to pay a little bit more for a little bit less net weight for the liquid ones. Now I think a lot of people are probably going to be talking about the three numbers. This is the NPK value. So the first number will always indicate parts nitrogen. Nitrogen always goes towards the foliar material and the stems and stuff like that of the leaves. So if you have a crop that's very leafy, doesn't have very many fruits, you're not focusing on flowers, try to get one with a little bit of a higher end number. The middle number is the P number, so this over here will be phosphorus. Phosphorus is great for starting a really strong root system, and it's really good at focusing on blooms. It's really good for fruit set. It also tends to inhibit abscisic acid, so it makes your fruits last longer on the plant, and it typically kind of increases the overall quality of fruit, including taste and aroma. So the last number, which I would argue is probably the most influential number out of the three, other than maybe nitrogen, is the potash or the potassium number, the K number. So this one over here is the one that affects the roots the most. Excuse me. And it also affects the flowers, and it tends to make the plants a little bit less brittle. That one there is very important for fruiting crops. It's very important for if you're growing something that's a newly transplanted plant, or if you're growing something along the lines of an established cutting. This one here also tends to reduce the availability of a lot of micronutrients in the soil, so you want to make sure that it's not too high, depending on what you planted with. The first value, the nitrogen value, also tends to influence the overall pH. Well, all of them do, but this one in particular, the pH of the soil tends to lower a little bit. As it becomes more saline in the soil, you might have to do a flush of irrigation, just distilled water, just to make sure that your pH stays at a good level. So then the next thing is you have a guarantee. So this over here will tell you the overall percentage of bulk weight for all sorts of nutrients. So these here are all your macronutrients, and then usually on top of this you'll have your micronutrients too, which usually includes zinc, it includes boron, it includes molybdenum, and a whole bunch of other stuff. They all have different needs, and if you tend to see a lot of yellow in your plants and a lot of brittleness and a lot of paleness in the heads of your plants, usually go for one with a little bit more nitrogen and a little bit more phosphoric acid. What's another thing I should say? You never want to fertilize when it's incredibly hot and dry and direct sunlight outside, because then you risk burning your leaves. I actually have a little bit of leaf burn here from fertilizing, just to show you on this Asiatic lily. That doesn't go away, that's just kind of permanently on the leaf. Negatively influences the plants. Usually that's because you've done a foliar fertilizer, you've accidentally watered too high and then it got sunny. A lot of them will have a recommended dosage, so this one here is just 7 drops. I highly recommend for younger plants and for tropical plants that are just getting accustomed to your house that you start off with a lower dosage. And I recommend actually increasing the dosage depending on the frequency that you water for larger scale plants and small trees, especially if you have like an evergreen mix. They tend to benefit a little bit more from that. If you have a plant that's sort of, say, unimpatient, for example, that has a very short, very profuse cycle of blooming, I recommend increasing that to about 10 drops, just from what I've seen. What else should I say? So these over here, sometimes the guarantee is divided into 2. So you have your macronutrients, which means the ones that are more prevalent in the mix and the ones that are more influential to a general plant health. And then here you're going to have your micronutrients, which are typically in lower quantities, more concentrated. They typically will also have some sort of a description of what they do. Now this one here says manganese and zinc should only be used as recommended. I agree with that. It can become somewhat toxic to the plant if you have a mix that has too many micronutrients, so you just want to make sure you don't burn your leaves. When handling these guys, especially the granular ones, I highly recommend gloves. Some people do get a little bit of a skin irritation. Liquid ones generally fine, but just make sure you label whatever container you put them on. You do not want to drink this stuff. And the granular ones, typically more of a spring thing. You want to work them deep into the soil to get them to really work. You guys, I hope that really kind of helped you guys a little bit more on figuring out what type of fertilizer to use, what type of fertilizer to buy. If you have any questions, let me know. It's wonderful to be back, and stay blessed. Thank you.